Hey everybody, welcome back for another Make and Tell Tuesday. It's January, which means I'm still clearing off Christmas from my work table, and I can't quite bring myself to totally put away my Christmas or wintry items, and yet I'm kind of ready for a little bit of spring. So for today's project, I'm going to be combining a few elements from our November release with some springier elements for a really pretty, bright, and colorful card. I'm going to be showing you how to add some details to stamped images using colored pencils, and also a few tips on using our inside and out berry branch die. So I'm going to be combining the Oopsie Daisy set along with this cute little floral sprig from the Pine Blossom set, along with some elements from our November release, like the Nordic frames and the inside and out berry branch. And I'm also going to be tucking in a little bit of the pine bough, Botanicut's pine bough die, which I just love these little sprigs. They're definitely not just for Christmas and winter. They look really pretty tucked in with other floral elements as well. So let's start off with this lavender daisy. I have stamped it using shaded lilac distress oxide ink for both steps of the petals, peeled paint for the stem, and then wild honey and rusty hinge for the inside of the daisy. And so we're going to go ahead and use some colored pencils to add some shading. I have selected some kind of bluish purple shades that we're going to use to add even more detail and shading into those petals. So I'm going to start off with this lighter colored pencil and just add some shading to the edges of each of those petals. One thing to keep in mind with colored pencils is you're always going to have better results when you work with a really nice sharp tip. I like to use these Staedtler metal pencil sharpeners. They give the pencils a really nice sharp tip, which makes it much easier to work with. So I'm just kind of going along, like I said, the edges of each of these petals with my lightest colored pencil that I have selected. This is a Faber-Castell Polychromo. It is ultramarine, a light ultramarine 9201-140. All right, so now I'm going to switch to a darker purple. This is number 120. And I'm going to add some even darker shading, especially down around the center of the daisy. And into those areas that the layered stamping, the detail layers of the stamping, I will also darken that up. So I'm using some pretty heavy pressure on these areas right near the center where I want to give it some really nice dark shading. And then I'm kind of just blending outward, working towards a lighter pressure towards as I get further out into the petal. So a lot of pressure right here, and then some heavier pressure right along the edge of the petal, and then kind of lightening up and kind of just blending that. All right, so you can see that that's kind of coming to life right there. I'm going to switch to one shade darker here. This is a 151, and just get some really dark shades right in to the base of those petals. Okay, so now we're going to work on shading the center of the daisy, and I have some kind of orangish browns selected here to do that with. This first one that I'm going to be using is 9201-187. It's a burnt ochre, and I'm going to just kind of shade this lighter area. Leaving some of that area I'm not going to color over, so that brighter yellow can still kind of come through there. And then I'll switch to my little bit darker color. This is 169, and I'm going to get some really nice deep color into the base of that flower center and along this edge where the shading is from the second step of that center stamp. So you have a little bit of a guide there to go by for adding even more shading. So I'm going to get some nice dark color into that base and along that edge. And so I'm using really nice heavy pressure there, and then I'll kind of just lighten up and blend it outward. And then there's these little dots inside of there, which is part of that second step of that daisy center. And I'm going to add just some little lines on the bottom side of those dots to define those a little bit further and make them look like they're just kind of popping out of that daisy. Okay, so we can also add just a little bit of shading to the stem. I have a green here, which is olive green yellowish, number 173. And so I'm going to add some shading under here where the petals meet the stem, where there would be a bit of a shadow. And then we'll also add some to the leaf and kind of along the side of the whole entire stem. So I love adding colored pencil details to solid stamped images. I think it's a really great way to start experimenting with coloring. If you've been intimidated by coloring, just outline images totally from scratch, this is a good way to start, because oftentimes, especially with our stamp designs at the Greetery, there is a bit of a guide to start you off on. So since they're solid image stamps, a lot of times I incorporate multiple layers, which gives you a good head start on the shading and kind of a guide of where to take it a little bit further. So I used the same basic technique on this little daisy bud as well. This was stamped using sponge sugar for the petals, peeled paint for the stem, and then the same rusty hinge and wild honey for the two-step center of that daisy bud. And then I just went ahead and used the same technique that I just showed on the purple daisy. I added some shading to the petals using a kind of a coral pink. So now we have this cute little cluster of blooms from the Pine Blossom set, and you can see how we can really make that a little more special as well with using some colored pencil shading. So this is the arrangement that I have decided on, and I incorporated a fit to be tied bow and a sentiment from the Pine Blossom set. And also the inside and out berry branch die is in the background, cut from white cardstock. And so I'm going to show you a little tip now on how to adhere that inside and out berry branch die. So I have that positioned right there. I'm going to lay some press and seal over the top of that. And just kind of remember my position of where I wanted that. Since the inside and out berry branch has all these kind of little pieces that are free floating, it can be a little bit tricky to work with when you're ready to adhere it. And so if I put it on the press and seal, that just holds it nice and in place, and I can add my adhesive to the back side. I like to use my scrappy glue. So then I can go ahead and flip it over and just remember where my position was. Go ahead and smooth over that and remove the press and seal. Nice and easy way to position that die. So we can go ahead and add the rest of our die cuts. I'm going to put my arrangement back in place so I know where everything is and I'm happy with the placement before I start gluing everything. I also have one of the little berry clusters from the inside and out berry branch die that I colored with colored pencils, and we're going to tuck in there as well and top it off with a fit to be tied bow. So then I'll just go ahead and secure those all down. Alright, so there you go. The last step would be to add this to a card base and you're all finished. Thanks for joining me, everybody, for this Make and Tell Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're not quite ready to put away your Christmas and winter stamps, that's okay. Just try combining them with some different elements and see what looks you can create.